This is the One Nerd Power.
You might have noticed a significant decline in the number of comedies on the big screen over the last 2 decades. The era of blockbuster comedies like 21, Jump Street, and The Hangover seems to be fading into memory. There are multiple explanations for this. The way we consume humor has changed with the internet, and comedy is now free. Comedy has been integrated into action blockbusters, such as those produced by Marvel. Film studios are focusing on foreign markets, where audiences tend to prefer universal plotlines over culturally specific comedies. With comic book adaptations and reboots dominating theaters, mid-sized productions, including comedies, have moved to streaming services that prioritize quantity over quality. The Frat Pack of actors who once dominated the comedy scene have aged out, and a new generation of comedic actors to replace them has not emerged. Individuals with comedic talent are now gaining fame through 15-second videos or hanging around with their friends on YouTube. Humor back then was also very different than now, and people face severe repercussions for laughing at the wrong jokes.
Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment, and let me know what you think.
It is not just that movies have changed, older films also do not seem as funny anymore. It is the acceleration of humor. We have become spoiled by the massive influx of memes we encounter daily on the internet. Nothing can keep up with this constant stream of humor. Young people no longer need to watch funny movies when they can get their comedy fix from podcasts, TikTok, and YouTube. Stand-up comedians have recognized this shift and were among the first to adapt. Nowadays, stand-up comedy feels like a non-stop barrage of jokes, catering to the faster-paced humor that audiences expect. Marvel also realized that superhero films can encompass a variety of genres. Comedy has been incorporated into action blockbusters, which are typically safer investments for studio executives. Films like Ant-Man, Guardians of the Galaxy, and Thor Ragnarok are examples of action comedies. Even movies that are expected to be more serious, like Avengers Endgame, include numerous jokes that sometimes clash with the overall tone of the film. Writing comedy is perhaps the most challenging genre due to its subjective nature. It is nearly impossible to create jokes that universally resonate with every viewer because humor depends heavily on individual perspectives and life experiences. During the 2010s, movies began to debut internationally rather than just locally, prompting film studios to strategize their production and revenue forecasts around global markets. Action films such as Star Wars or Marvel often feature culturally universal plotlines, such as the hero's journey, and frequently draw from established franchises. Comedy faces greater challenges in the international market. The perception of humor and what people find funny varies significantly across cultures. Comedy often relies on language-specific puns or culturally specific references, which can limit its universal appeal. As a result, comedies are inherently riskier investments in the international market compared to action films and established franchises. This is a significant factor in Mr. Bean's international success. His comedy relies entirely on physical humor, making it easily understandable across different cultures. Mr. Bean's antics are just as amusing to British audiences as they are to viewers around the world. Studios have increasingly focused on producing franchise films and superhero blockbusters, genres that promise high returns. This shift has left little room for the standalone comedy films that once drew large audiences. Studios are shifting away from mid-sized movies in favor of low-risk, high-reward projects. These include either big-budget films with star power that are likely to recoup their costs and generate significant profit, or small films with minimal financial commitment. Comedies, which typically have mid-range budgets, often struggle to compete with the massive marketing and production budgets of action and superhero movies. The financial risk associated with comedy films is higher because their success heavily relies on the unpredictability of audience tastes and humor, making studios less willing to invest in them. Streaming services have stepped in to fill the gap for both stand-up and film comedians. It is challenging to secure a deal with a Hollywood studio when you are already under contract with Netflix. Why pay for a ticket to see a single movie when you can wait and pay for a monthly subscription to a streaming service? Movie theaters have become the domain of spectacles like Marvel, Star Wars, or Fast and Furious. This trend will likely persist for the foreseeable future. Comedy movies are expected to shift exclusively to streaming services, with major studios ceasing their production. Many actors who were key figures in comedies of the past decades are beginning to age out or move on. The Frat Pack and 90s SNL alumni, for instance, are now in their 50s and 60s, and no successors of comparable quality have emerged since. Today, many people struggle to identify the leading comedy movie actors of our time. These days, there are no common experience comedies that everyone has seen, as there were in past decades. Comedy, despite its popularity among audiences, often does not receive the critical acclaim or awards that serious dramas do. This disparity is not due to comedy being easier to create. In fact, writing good comedy requires a unique set of skills. Effective comedy relies on timing, references, wordplay, and an acute understanding of human nature. It's not just about making people laugh, it is about doing so in a way that feels natural and effortless. Hollywood has seen a notable decline in the quality of its writing. You cannot expect the people who came up with
Somehow Palpatine returned
to write a good comedy. This line exemplifies the lack of creativity and depth that has plagued recent Hollywood scripts. The 2000s were the last decade when comedy movies were the primary source of humor. Now, comedic talent is dispersed across various mediums. The new SNL cast is not as funny, and you are more likely to find laughs from random clips and videos on the internet. Many talented comedians are now pursuing careers on YouTube or TikTok. A few decades ago, these creators would have been offered traditional Hollywood development deals. An aspiring comedian could take a shot at Hollywood with a 1 in a million chance of becoming the next Robin Williams or Jim Carrey. Alternatively, they could start a YouTube channel where there is a much higher chance of being monetized. Once successful on YouTube, they have little reason to switch to another medium, as YouTubers are now some of the biggest celebrities, and now kids aspire to become one.
There is now a completely different set of rules that goes into how we decide to be entertained and how we decide to pay for what that entertainment is. Because if you and I and everybody else in this room wanted to be entertained for free, for the rest of the month, we could be, between YouTube or an app or anything else that is part of the social media. That's free. That means it does not cost us anything.
Comedians are increasingly cautious about avoiding controversy, which restricts the types of comedy that are released. There is a fear of backlash for jokes that may have been acceptable in the past, but are now deemed offensive. Even seemingly innocuous shows like Friends have faced criticism for their humor. Stand-up comedians have regularly discussed how issues such as gender norms and political correctness have completely changed their field. Comedy is now much trickier than it once was. Prominent figures in comedy, such as Jerry Seinfeld and Chris Rock, have openly discussed how contemporary societal pressures have stifled comedic expression and changed the risk-reward dynamics in their field. For example, in the movie Tropic Thunder, Robert Downey Jr. played an Australian method actor who undergoes pigmentation alteration surgery to darken his skin for his role as a black character in a war movie. Downey Jr. faced criticism for his portrayal in blackface throughout much of Tropic Thunder. However, it is important to note that the film uses blackface in a different context than its historical use of mocking people of color. Instead, the movie critiques the industry practice of denying black actors opportunities, illustrating how Hollywood would prefer to cast white actors in black roles.
And some ribs, yeah! You're Australian! Be Australian! Excuse me, Kangaroo Jack. Just knew I had to represent. Because they had one good part in for a black man, they gave it to Crocodile Dundee.
In response to the controversy, Downey Jr. explained in a podcast with Joe Rogan the concept behind his character in the film.
Tropic Thunder was about how wrong that is.
Yes.
Such a film would be unlikely to be made today. Social media lacks room for nuance or context, and digital mobs often act without logic. However, comedy is influenced by social media in a more specific way. Explaining why we find things funny is complex. One theory suggests that our brains use humor as a cognitive reward for recognizing potentially dangerous, faulty patterns in a safe context before those errors could cause harm. A classic example of this is when someone trips. If they are hurt, it is not funny. If they are unharmed, we tend to laugh. The essence of comedy lies in disrupting expectations and taking controlled risks. Much humor thrives on delivering something unexpected, diverging from our usual expectations of how a situation unfolds. It is akin to experiencing a eureka moment when you get the joke, a satisfying realization akin to solving a puzzle. Comedy, by its nature, often pushes boundaries and addresses societal taboos. When humor is sanitized to fit within safe, universally agreed upon boundaries, it eliminates the essence of humor, which thrives on being unexpected or challenging. Political correctness tends to eliminate nuance, as anything could potentially lead to someone being canceled. As a result, it is better not to give the audience something they may not understand. For instance, in the animated show Velma, much of the humor revolves around the privilege of white males.
Just being a white guy with a clipboard doesn't cut it anymore. White people, Daphne. There's a rich white guy with a tiny
handsome, rich, white man.
That's some white people.
It largely echoes a long-standing discourse from one end of the political spectrum over the past decades. It is hard to understand what is supposed to be funny about it. Perhaps social media is blurring the line between entertainment and political discourse. The dopamine release associated with social media addiction can lead people to conflate legitimate humor with mere expressions of political opinions they happen to agree with. Now I would like to hear your opinion. Thank you for watching and see you next time.